Have you ever had that feeling where you're just going through the motions? You wake up, you go to work, you talk to your family, you pay the bills, you sleep in your own bed. But deep down, there's this quiet, lingering sensation that you aren't really there. Today, we're diving into a profoundly moving explainer that answers exactly why we feel this way. We're being guided by the incredible work of Urvasi Claudia Alagna. She's a therapist, a Jungian psychologist, a mystic, an astrologer, and a guide for inner transformation processes. Urvasi brings us this incredibly intimate, therapeutic, and deeply poetic look into a condition she calls interior exile. So, let's jump right in.
Just let this sink in for a second. Interior exile does not begin when a person leaves a place. It begins when they leave themselves. Through her work as a guide for inner transformation, Urvasi Claudia Alagna shows us that this isn't about geography or history. It's a condition of the soul. It is a subtle, almost invisible tragedy where you just abandon your own center. You can be sitting right there in your own living room, surrounded by people you know, and yet be thousands of miles away from your actual authentic self. And the tricky part is, this exile doesn't always look like a breakdown. It's an illusion of presence. To the outside world, you function perfectly. You smile, you love, you work, you hold conversations. But underneath that, there's a reality of absence. You smile, but you aren't really present. You love, but you are completely lost. You work, but your inner light is just fading away. You function, but you don't actually inhabit your life. You become exiled from your own body, your true desires, your joy, and your actual voice. As Urvasi so beautifully points out, we adapt so intensely to survive that we literally forget what our original shape even looked like.
Which brings us to the next section, the silent transaction, the pact of exile for survival.
So how does this happen? We don't just wake up and decide to abandon our souls. As a therapist, Urvasi explains that there's a deep psychological mechanism here. We make a silent transaction. We willingly, though unconsciously, hand over our inner center just to belong. We trade our truth for protection. Think about it. The little girl learns not to bother anyone. The boy learns he has to hide his tears. The adolescent learns that being desirable is way safer than being real. The adult learns that producing is more valuable than feeling. The woman learns to hold everyone else up before she even listens to her own needs. The man learns to mask his fragility. The therapist learns they must always have the answers. The spiritual person learns they aren't allowed to get angry. The artist learns to please the crowd before revealing their soul. We do this out of trauma, obedience, and survival.
And all of those compromises build up to one secret, devastating belief. If I am myself, I lose love. Urvasi Claudia Alagna identifies this as the hidden rule governing so many of our lives. Out of the sheer terror of losing the affection of a mother, the approval of a father, or the acceptance of our group, we choose a half-lived adapted identity. We would rather be accepted in halves than risk showing up whole and being rejected. But every single time we betray ourselves just to fit in, we lose contact with our own inner home.
Let's look at this through Section 7, the mystical and psychological lens, the displaced spark, and the internal game.
What makes Urvasi Claudia Alagna's perspective so profound is how she weaves her expertise as an astrologer and mystic into her therapeutic work. She brings in Jewish mysticism, where exile is understood not just as a historical event, but as a deep condition of the soul. It's the state where your divine spark gets displaced from its center. There is something inside you that inherently belongs to the light, but because of this exile, it's living far, far away from its root. Something that should be beautifully whole becomes fragmented. The energy that's supposed to circulate freely inside you gets entirely blocked. And bridging that with her work as a Jungian psychologist, Urvasi explains how this shows up in our unconscious games. We become an internal game piece. We completely forget that we are the player moving the pieces, and instead we over-identify with a survival mask, a false self. We actually start to believe we are just the victim, the strong one, the guilty one, the invisible one, or the mother to everyone. The game piece takes over the whole board. Your life narrows down, and you just keep repeating the same defensive loops, completely cut off from your original soul.
Moving on to Section 10, the protest of the soul, the price of adaptation.
Now here's the thing about interior exile. At first, it doesn't always hurt. In fact, it pays off. If you look at this table, there's an initial reward. You please people, and they love you. You stay silent, and you avoid conflict. You overwork, and everybody admires you. You act perfectly, and they value you. It buys you safety. But then, the bill comes due. The soul starts to protest. That final price is heavy. It looks like deep exhaustion, sudden sadness, sudden rage, a total loss of your true desires, severe anxiety, and even somatic physical symptoms or insomnia. You literally feel like you are living someone else's life.
The adaptation just destroys your spirit.
And eventually, all of that pain, all of that emptiness, brings up one piercing question that starts knocking from the inside. Where am I in my own life? Urvasi teaches us that this isn't a breakdown. This is a sacred question. The exact moment you ask this, the exile has become conscious. This crisis is actually the spark that starts your journey back home. Which leads us to section 13, Teshuvah and the return, reclaiming inner territory. So how do we actually return? Urvasi introduces the mystical and therapeutic concept of Teshuvah, which means return. And listen, this isn't some superficial self-help trend where you just look in a mirror and say nice things to yourself. This is deep, symbolic, and demanding inner work. Returning from exile means reclaiming occupied territory. You have to take your life back, reclaim your body, actually feeling it again, reclaim your words, speaking your actual truth, not just what's polite, reclaim your true desire and your vocation. And you absolutely must reclaim your boundaries and your right to true, peaceful silence. You are bringing that displaced divine spark right back to the center where it belongs. But we have to be real about the uncomfortable truth here. Returning to yourself is going to disappoint some people. As Urvasi so clearly points out, many of our relationships were built entirely on our exile. Some people only like you when you don't have boundaries, when you're infinitely available, when you play the exact role they assign to you. Healing is going to shake up that system. You might face a period of real loneliness. But true solitude is infinitely better than a fake belonging that you bought by abandoning yourself. Your exile ends the moment you stop asking for permission to take up your own space in the world. And it's not about being selfish, it's about having the courage to finally say, this I feel, this I do not want, this I actually need, this I no longer accept in my life. And simply, this is mine. It's the incredibly powerful realization that your voice, your presence, and your soul are entirely valid. We are going to wrap up this explainer today with this haunting yet ultimately liberating final thought from Urvasi Claudia Alagna. We do not lose ourselves all at once. We lose ourselves every time we choose to betray ourselves to keep a belonging that no longer feeds the soul. What a powerful, poetic lens through which to look at the choices we make every single day. So the question I want to leave you with today is this: where in your life are you still paying the price of exile? And what piece of your inner territory are you going to reclaim today? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I hope it sparks your very own journey back home.